Welcome to Black and Gold Digital Edition, a behind-the-scenes look at your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hi, and welcome to our digital show for week number 7. I'm Jay Puskar alongside Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski. And guys, let's get right to it. Kent, we'll start with you. What a great performance against the Cleveland Browns this past weekend, really taking it to the Browns, and it all started with a great defensive play by Minkah Fitzpatrick. Your thoughts on the way the Steelers played and really took a firm grasp of that contest?
Yeah, total domination, and I think Minkah's interception set the tone for that right away. You know, gave the Steelers a 10-point lead, and you know, just let that defense do what it did, and put a ton of pressure on Baker, and forced them into making some mistakes. So I don't think anybody expected a game like that, especially with how hyped that game was coming in, and then the Steelers just totally dominated the game. I don't know whether it's that they're that good or whether that's the worst 4-1 team that came into Heinz Field that I've seen.
And Mike, even last week I had mentioned it feels like big brother versus little brother. And then Mike Tomlin in his post-game conference said this was great varsity performance by the Steelers. And that's how you felt. It was like a JV versus varsity matchup, and the Steelers really took a certain dominance to that game.
This is what we were worried about, though, is the Browns lost their first game of the season 38-6 against the Ravens. Then it's like, okay, they're 4-1, but the one loss was pretty lopsided.
Right.
They did it again. As you said, 73-12 now in these two AFC North games for Cleveland. So they're going to really have to go back to the drawing board, and you'd hope to see them put up a better fight the next time around in Cleveland. But for Pittsburgh, yeah, the way that they started this game off defensively allows them to call the plays they want to on both sides of the ball and just, you know, pin their ears back and get after Baker Mayfield. And as Kent said, I mean, he didn't look comfortable on a single snap all day and then gets benched. I mean, this was just a complete performance from Pittsburgh.
And guys, while they're trying to celebrate a big victory, especially when it comes to within the division, but a huge loss, losing Devin Bush at linebacker to an ACL injury. Here we go again. They lost Ben Roethlisberger last year to a season-ending injury, and defensively now they lost one of their captains. And how are they going to be able to at least adapt going into this matchup against the Titans, Kent?
Well, when I look at this injury, it's devastating because he's a #1 draft pick. But let's not get carried away too. I mean, it's not like he's a wily veteran that's been out there for 5-6 years, you know, and has been manning that spot. You know, he's still in a learning process as far as I'm concerned. So if it was going to happen to somebody on that defense, you know, I think it's okay to happen with Devin and to fill in with Spillane, who did really well against the Browns. But I think he's going to be tested here coming up against the Titans, and we'll see if they try to exploit that side of the field. You know, with a guy who I don't know that is as quick as Devin Bush is in pass coverage with the tight end sets that I think you're going to see against the Titans.
Mike, do you get the sense that this defense, already good as it is, the individuals are going to have to elevate their game just a little bit more and help out those guys that will be filling that role?
Yeah, it is going to be a big challenge. Robert Spillane actually did start out with the Titans in 2018. He's a two-time All-MAC selection out of Western Michigan, a guy that's a little undersized, and he might not have the speed element that Bush brings to the table, but I think he's a guy that's going to have to know and command the defense, know exactly where to line everybody up. But yeah, Kent makes a good point. The tight end is going to be a huge spot for this game. We're not sure if Jonnu Smith is going to play after a high ankle sprain, but he's dangerous. Anthony Ferkser, their backup tight end, had a career day against Houston, over 100 yards. Michael Pruitt, they've got a lot of 3 tight end sets. They like to play that personnel. But the big advantage for Pittsburgh, conversely, is the Tennessee injury on the offensive line. Taylor Lewan out with a torn ACL as of this past week on that left tackle spot. So TJ Watt and Bud Dupree have to like that site because they're probably going to be facing Tyson Braylo, a veteran, but a guy that I'm sure they'd rather play against than Lewan.
And guys, the way these two teams are built, it's almost mirror images. And Ken, how much are we looking forward to this matchup? I mean, the matchup of the running defense and the running game, and it just really seems like on paper this is going to be the best matchup out of the weekend.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers line up against them defensively. I really can't see them stacking the box. I know they want to try to stop that run game with Derrick Henry, but I can't see them selling out and to do that. I think they're just going to line up and try to play football. They're not going to. I think they're going to. You're not going to see as much of a pass rush because there's so much play action to worry about with Tannehill, and I think that short game is going to come into to play here. You know, so I'm not looking for Derrick Henry to to get 100+ yards in this game. I think you're going to see a lot of play action, a lot of dunks over top of the line, short passing game to try to even things out.
And Mike, for a team that made it to the AFC Championship game last year, I mean, Tennessee's not going to be intimidated by this matchup, even though they're 5-0 as well. They feel pretty good about what they're doing as they continue to trend forward in the standings.
One thing that's maybe good news, bad news for Pittsburgh is good news. You're not going to see an offense do what they did last week again. You would think 601 yards is a franchise record. I mean, for the first time in NFL history, they had a 350-yard passer and 200-yard rusher in a single game. No one's ever done that in the history of football. You would think that's not going to happen again. So you think, okay, we got that out of the way. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different receiving options, and they've kind of come back gradually off that COVID list too. I mean, A.J. Brown came back 2 games ago from an injury earlier this season. Adam Humphries, the slot receiver, comes back off the COVID list for the Houston game. Now Corey Davis is back as well, so they've got a lot of different options. But conversely, I think the one thing that's not talked about enough is the Steelers being able to take advantage of the Titans' lack of defensive performance. I mean, they've given up about 30 points or more in almost every single game this year. Jadeveon Clowney, Vic Beasley have been non-factors on that defense. Adoree Jackson's not played this year at corner. There's a lot of holes on that Titans defense, and I think Pittsburgh could exploit some of that by being able to run the ball early and then also spread it out. And maybe a big game for Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been a little bit quiet.
Yeah, they lost those games or won those games against a lot of mediocre quarterbacks put up some numbers against them too. You know?
Ken, how great has this Steelers wide receiving core been too? I mean, it just seems like every week someone's stepping up, and they're all embracing those statistical numbers, and they know that they're not being selfish about it.
Yeah, they're going to be difficult to cover. Who knows where the double team is going to come this time? Chase Claypool, does it go? Does he get doubled up, and is that free Juju up now over the middle and in that slot position to get a lot of targets? And I think Juju is the leading target on that team if you look at all the statistics. So maybe Mike's right, and you do see Juju have a breakout game here. But it'll be interesting to see, and who knows whether even Ebron, I could see him having a big game here as well.
Finally, guys, it's going to be just the second road game of the season for the Steelers, just based on how this game has been rescheduled, and it's going to be the first of 3 road games for the Steelers coming up. How do they handle this environment? Because there are some fans that have been able to go to Nashville and watch some of these games. How do they handle this next road trip coming up, knowing that it's the first of 3?
Well, first of all, it's not going to be a packed stadium, and I think Steelers fans are always well represented in Nashville. They've been trying to go there for the last 2 months, so they're going. They're excited. You're going to see Steeler fans well represented there. But it's always, in my opinion, tough to get a road win, regardless of all the other factors. So just the fact that the home team doesn't have to travel, the comfortability factor of being home. And especially in this environment here. So I think it's going to be a tough sled for the Steelers to go in there and win this game. And then follow that up with an away game against Baltimore and another away game against Dallas. So, it could be an interesting couple of weeks. But I think if they come out of there with 2 wins out of those 3 games, that'll be good.
Mike, how do you feel?
Kind of a weird schedule quirk. These 2 teams have only combined to play 3 road games at this point in the season. I mean, kind of weird that both of these teams have been very comfortable playing at home and familiar with playing at home. So, like Kent said, I think that's a good way to look at it is you try to take 2 out of these 3 in the stretch, and you obviously can't look too far ahead to Baltimore or, think about all 3 matchups, but one at a time. But this will be a fun game just from the standpoint we've only seen this, I think, 7 times before. 2 undefeated teams this deep into the season head-to-head. And this could be a huge game in terms of obviously the playoff standings later in the year.
Well, if you certainly don't have a horse in the race, this is the game that you would want to watch this week. It's going to be a good one as 2 unbeatens face off in Nashville. For Mike Fenner and Kent Urbanski, I'm Jay Puskar. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week for Black and Gold Digital Edition.